Hello. In this presentation and the demonstration, we'll talk about the AI functions associated with RFQ tool. The RFQ is general process for requesting code, but now that has been powered with AI to enhance functionality in the workflow and simplify the workflow process. So we understand that the procurement teams makes multiple RFQs and send it to suppliers by email expecting them to submit the code. It's a very manual process and a tedious process. They send the inquiry, attach drawings, technical sheets, specification, quantity, define the delivery timeline, and send it to the supplier expecting a code back in a structured format. So this entire process is called RFQ. This is a pre-procurement process. It's also called as a sourcing process. So there are traditionally a lot of challenges associated with this process, and it's 100% manual. So let's first discuss how current RFQ process is managed. It's a very time consuming and labor intensive work. So there is a buyer and a buyer wants to buy some welding electrodes, welding flux, shoulder wire. He creates an RFQ, sends it to multiple suppliers by email. So these are his own approved suppliers. Generally, he would be taking quotes from all these suppliers to understand the price point and then maybe go for a negotiation. So the first step is sending the inquiry, and it is normally managed through email. Once the RFQ is sent to suppliers, he would expect the suppliers to come back to him with a quotation. The suppliers come with a quotation to the buyer. Now, buyer collects all these quotes. Some supplier would quote immediately, other suppliers would quote in few hours, other would quote maybe in few days. So he has to wait till all the quotations or maybe majority of the suppliers have quoted. So he can create a comparative statement in Excel. So he will take all these quotes, create a nice comparative to understand what the suppliers have quoted. We call it side-by-side analysis of the pricing information, the delivery timeline, payment terms, and everything. Once the quotation is compared in Excel, based on that, he will do an analysis, set up a target price, and start the negotiation process. Now, negotiation is the most challenging part. Generally, when you are taking quotations from multiple suppliers, you don't call all the suppliers and start negotiating. Buyers normally trend to call L1 and L2 supplier and try to push them uh, towards the lower pricing. They'll ask for better prices. So maybe he will pick up a phone and say, supplier A, Mr. A, that your prices is very high. आपने 20 rupees quote किया है. I'm expecting a price of 16 rupees. So this is how the negotiation generally works. Then the supplier would respond, no, I've given you the better price. All that drama, story drama, it plays on very well. And that's very time-taking process. Negotiation is something very important for companies that it is done correctly so they can get the best market rate. But due to the challenging process of the entire workflow of negotiating, like calling each supplier, speaking to them, or maybe emailing them, expecting them to reply back on email. Again, that's a very time-taking process. The negotiation process sometimes uh, is very difficult to execute manually because generally a buyer is doing hundreds of RFQs every week, and it is not justified that he can spend all the time dealing with all this complex uh, negotiation process. So let's first discuss what are the setbacks of manual RFQ process. Managing multiple RFQs manually through email and Excel sheet is a tedious and inefficient process, as I explained you earlier, and that is very true. I think you can ask any procurement person and he will tell you how complex it is. The one thing is very realistic is the buyer cannot engage negotiating with every supplier, as I said, over email or maybe over a phone call. That's not practically possible, because when you do 100 RFQs a week, you would be having at least more than 700 suppliers, 600 suppliers dealing with. You cannot communicate with them on a very active basis and do justice with speaking after 5 minutes, or communicate writing email 2 times or 3 times and negotiating. That's not realistically possible. So generally buyer tends to negotiate with L1 or L2 and then close the sourcing process. In most cases, when buyers enter into negotiation, the target price given by the buyer to the supplier is also unrealistic. That results in failed or limited negotiation. For example, say you're buying a welding electrode, you have got a quote from multiple suppliers. The lowest cost is say 100 rupee a kg. You would call the supplier and say, can you give me my target? I'm getting a price at 80 rupees. Can you uh, meet this price? Now, these are branded products. Sometimes it's not even remotely possible to meet this kind of prices. So the buyer supplier would say to the buyer, नहीं sir, possible नहीं है, आपको मिल रहा है 80 में ले लो. Now in that scenario, you cannot even go back again and say, okay, now tell me what is the lowest cost you can agree with. So that becomes very kind of awkward situation for the buyer also. So many of the times you are not able to negotiate much deeper and on a realistic basis with the suppliers. So what we have seen is there is a lot of time constraint with the buyers, and they normally focus on high value items. So value like 2 लाख के ऊपर है तो negotiate करेंगे, बिलो 2 लाख है तो इतने इफेक्टिव नहीं है negotiation में, टाइम स्पेंड नहीं कर रहे. 10 लाख रुपए के ऊपर की चीज है तो वी आर negotiating with every supplier. So they'll have their kind of brackets and the formulas and the processes to engage with the suppliers. But if you look from the entire procurement spend, generally 30% to 40% of the items are low to medium value spend. And we are not able to do justice negotiating aggressively with this kind of RFQs. And so you leave a lot of money for the suppliers to feast on. So this is where eSupplier is introducing an AI-powered RFQ-based sourcing software. It's a completely autonomous tool that will allow companies to simplify the sourcing process, negotiate every RFQ in detail. Let us understand how it works. See, as we discussed in the first slide, the entire RFQ process. So in this, the most important thing is that a buyer has got two roles. One role is he would create an initial RFQ and send it to suppliers. Second role is collect all the quotations from the supplier, create a nice, beautiful Excel sheet to understand what suppliers have quoted, and based on that, create a negotiation process. So this is the two areas where we are going to introduce AI, and AI will assist the buyers right from RFQ creation to negotiation part. That will be completely assisted by the AI tool. So why switch to AI-based sourcing automation? So let's try to discuss about that a bit. So as I said, it basically does a lot of RFQ work at high speed, autonomously, and that frees your procurement team to do a lot of high value or core procurement and supply chain tasks. Whether 20 RFQ a month or 100 RFQ a month, eSupplier software sends RFQs, collect quotes, compares, and even negotiate prices on behalf of the buyer. And the beautiful thing is it's all on autopilot. So you create the RFQ, you leave it, automation takes over from there till the final output. That is price negotiation. You can also schedule repetitive RFQs for price check, maybe or for rate contracts which you normally engage on an annual basis. For example, say your company does rate contract for pest control. So that is done on, say, generally on 1st of April every month, every year. So you create an RFQ, you set it on auto mode. So the system will know that your RFQ has to auto trigger, could be on March 10th every calendar year, and refloat it to the suppliers, collect the quotes, compare it, engage into negotiation. And these are multiple rounds of negotiation. First round, second round, third round, that is all on autopilot. So a lot of repetitive RFQs can also be sidelined and created into an auto process. So not only on a yearly basis, but you can also set like every 3 months you want to do a price check for X item. So it could be corrugated boxes. You can do that. So the software eSupply provides is fully a cloud-based software. It's simple and easy to use by the procurement teams. You just have to create the RFQ and leave it, then autopilot takes over from there. So with this, I'm ending my presentation. We always say AI is real and changing the world. It's only that, are you ready? Thank you.